An investigation into a series of alleged multi-million-dollar fraud schemes in Minnesota involving the state's large Somali community.
The Somalians should be out of here. Somalia is considered by many to be the worst country on earth.
3:47 a.m., Washington, D.C. A freezing rain coats the marble city in black glass. Temperature holds at 19 degrees. The Lincoln Memorial glows pale and distant through sheets of frozen mist. Somewhere in Georgetown, behind a wrought-iron gate lined with dormant boxwoods, a porch light flickers on. 41 agents from the FBI, DEA, and U.S. Marshals Service converge on the residents in armored Suburbans. They wear plate carriers. They carry breaching tools. They stack at the front door of a 4-story brownstone owned by a sitting United States senator. A ram thuds against the oak frame. Breach. The alarm screams. Agents flood the foyer, boots cracking against Italian marble. They sweep room by room, floor by floor, shouting commands into the dark. Upstairs, Senator Richard Caldwell, 61, stands in silk pajamas with his hands raised. And his wife is screaming. His attorney is already on the phone. It does not matter. The warrant is signed. The evidence is overwhelming. This was not a political hit. This was the culmination of a 31-day federal operation spanning 6 states and the District of Columbia. 74 tons of narcotics seized. Over 180 arrests executed. Cash reserves totaling $213 million recovered. 14 distribution hubs dismantled. Luxury vehicles, waterfront properties, and offshore accounts frozen across 3 continents. The senator was not a bystander. Federal prosecutors allege he was the political shield for one of the largest drug trafficking networks ever operated on the eastern seaboard. A network that moved heroin, fentanyl, and methamphetamine through legitimate shipping corridors, protected by men and women who swore oaths to the Constitution. It started with a broken taillight on Interstate 95, a state trooper, a K-9 named Duke, and a cargo van carrying enough fentanyl to kill every resident of Baltimore twice. If you want the full truth, hit like so this story reaches more people. The operation had a code name, Iron Corridor. For 31 days, more than 400 federal agents across 6 field offices had been building toward this moment. But to understand how a United States senator ended up in handcuffs, we go back 11 months earlier. October 3, 2025, 9:42 p.m. southbound Interstate 95, just past the exit for Fredericksburg, Virginia. Virginia State Trooper Kyle Dawson clocked a white Ford Transit van drifting across the center line. One taillight was out. He activated his lights. The van pulled onto the shoulder slowly, too slowly. Trooper Dawson approached the driver's side. The driver was a man named Vincent Reyes, 33, of Capitol Heights, Maryland. His commercial license listed him as an employee of Chesapeake Freight Solutions, a regional logistics company. His hands were shaking. His eyes kept darting to the rearview mirror. When Dawson asked about the cargo manifest, Reyes said he was hauling restaurant supplies. Dawson called for K-9 backup. Deputy Brandon Hale arrived with his Belgian Malinois Duke. Duke circled the van twice. He sat down at the rear doors. Inside, behind stacked boxes of industrial napkins and plastic cups, agents found 38 vacuum-sealed bricks of fentanyl. Field tests confirmed the substance. Total weight, 47 pounds. Street value, $6.8 million. Reyes said nothing. Yet he asked for a lawyer immediately. The report went straight to the DEA Richmond field office. Within 36 hours, a joint federal task force was assembled. FBI, DEA, Homeland Security Investigations, and the U.S. Postal Inspection Service pooled intelligence. Phone records from Reyes's burner phones linked to 14 other numbers across Maryland, Virginia, and D.C. Financial transactions tied Chesapeake Freight Solutions to a web of shell companies with no verifiable revenue streams. Surveillance footage from highway cameras showed the same white transit van making identical routes every 72 hours for 8 months. This was not a single courier run. It was a supply chain, a scheduled, protected, corporate-structured drug pipeline operating in the shadow of the nation's capital. If this shocks you, comment exposed below. But the traffic stop was only the surface. What federal agents found when they pulled financial records would expose an empire hiding behind boardrooms, campaign donations, and a seat in the United States Senate. Chesapeake Freight Solutions was incorporated in Delaware in 2021. On paper, it operated 4 warehouses across Maryland and Virginia, employed 42 people, and generated $3.1 million in annual revenue hauling commercial goods. In reality, it was a ghost. Customs records showed no international shipments. Warehouse leases were paid in cash. Employee records listed Social Security numbers belonging to deceased individuals. DEA forensic accountants subpoenaed bank records from 3 institutions. What they found was a financial architecture designed for concealment. And over $47 million had flowed through Chesapeake Freight's accounts in 22 months. Deposits arrived in amounts of $8,700, $9,100, $9,400, always just below the $10,000 federal reporting threshold. The money moved laterally through 6 additional shell companies: Patriot Logistics, LLC, registered in Virginia; Broad River Capital, registered in Wyoming; National Gateway Holdings, incorporated in Nevada. Each company existed only to receive money and push it forward. From there, the funds were wired offshore: $11.3 million to accounts in the Cayman Islands, $6.7 million to a private banking entity in Dubai, $4.2 million to a holding company in Hong Kong. The trail was deliberate, layered, and professionally managed. But investigators later determined that the financial architecture had been designed by a former corporate tax attorney named Gerald Whitfield, 54, of McLean, Virginia. For 8 weeks, agents watched. Unmarked vehicles rotated positions around 3 key warehouses in Capitol Heights, Landover, and a commercial lot near Anacostia. Cameras mounted on utility poles recorded every arrival and departure. GPS trackers, authorized by federal warrants, were placed on 7 vehicles associated with the network. They observed a man named Derek Stanton, 38, making deliveries in a white cargo van identical to the one stopped on I-95. Stanton visited apartment complexes in Southeast D.C., Prince George's County, and Annapolis. He stayed less than 5 minutes at each stop. He never carried anything visible inside. He always left with a small duffel bag. Surveillance teams documented Stanton meeting twice weekly with a woman named Carla Jennings, 44, at a leased office suite in Crystal City, Virginia. Jennings managed the books. Her laptop, later seized under warrant, contained spreadsheets tracking distribution volumes, client codes, and weekly revenue targets exceeding $1.2 million. But the most devastating discovery came from a single wire transfer. On March 14, 2025, Broad River Capital wired $175,000 to a political fundraising entity called the Caldwell Victory Fund. The registered beneficiary was Senator Richard Caldwell. It was not a campaign donation. It was a payment, and the FBI had the metadata to prove it. Type yes if you are ready to see what happened next. On November 9, 2025, a federal magistrate Judge Patricia Owens signed search warrants for 9 locations across 4 jurisdictions. The first warrant executed targeted a 12,000-square-foot warehouse on Kenilworth Avenue in Capitol Heights, Maryland. Agents from the DEA and FBI's Washington field office arrived at 5:15 a.m. The exterior appeared standard: corrugated metal walls, loading dock, commercial signage for Chesapeake Freight Solutions. Inside, the front section matched the cover story: pallets of cleaning supplies, shrink-wrapped boxes of paper goods, forklifts parked in neat rows. Behind the 3rd row of shelving, agents found a reinforced steel door secured with a biometric lock. A forensic technician bypassed the system in 11 minutes. Behind the door lay a 2,400-square-foot processing and packaging facility, 3 industrial pill presses, a commercial-grade mixing station, ventilation hoods, digital scales calibrated to the milligram. Stacked along the far wall, 914 kilograms of raw fentanyl powder, pre-mixed cutting agents, and 340,000 counterfeit oxycodone tablets stamped with pharmaceutical markings. A second room, accessible through a coded keypad, contained the network's operational brain: 4 laptops, encrypted with military-grade software, external hard drives, burner phones in sealed bags labeled by week, handwritten ledgers spanning 19 months of transactions. One ledger, bound in black leather, listed payments to individuals identified only by initials and government titles. The encryption on the laptops took FBI cyber forensics teams 6 days to crack. Inside, they found a communications platform operating on a modified signal protocol. iMessage logs revealed coordinated shipment schedules, law enforcement tip-offs, and direct instructions from a user identified only as Sentinel. Linguistic analysis and metadata tracing later confirmed Sentinel was Senator Richard Caldwell. One file contained a spreadsheet titled Municipal Assets. It listed 14 names: city inspectors, Port Authority employees, a Maryland State Police lieutenant, and 2 assistant U.S. attorneys. Next to each name was a dollar amount and a service description. Lieutenant James Foley, Maryland State Police, $8,000 per month, route clearance and advance warning. Assistant U.S. Attorney Neil Brogan, $25,000 quarterly, case diversion and grand jury intelligence. The corruption was not incidental. It was budgeted, scheduled, and performance reviewed like a corporate operation. If you believe this needs to be exposed, hit like now. The infrastructure was mapped. The players were identified. What remained was the strike, and federal commanders had 31 days to execute it before the network discovered the breach. Senator Richard Caldwell, 61, Republican, represented Virginia for 2 terms. A former Army JAG officer and Georgetown law graduate, he sat on the Senate Judiciary Committee and co-sponsored 3 anti-drug trafficking bills. His public image was unassailable: military veteran, tough-on-crime legislator, church deacon. His net worth, disclosed at $4.1 million, concealed offshore holdings exceeding $22 million. Federal prosecutors allege he provided legislative cover, intelligence on pending investigations, and direct intervention in federal cases targeting network associates. Say he owned properties in Georgetown, Hilton Head, and Turks and Caicos, all purchased through shell entities. Gerald Whitfield, 54, the financial architect, former partner at a K Street tax law firm, disbarred in 2019 for client fund misappropriation. He designed the entire shell company network from his home office in McLean. He moved $47 million in 22 months without triggering a single suspicious activity report. Derek Stanton, 38, Chief Distribution Lieutenant. Prior convictions for assault and possession with intent. Managed 23 street-level dealers across the D.C. metropolitan area. Carla Jennings, 44, Operational Controller. No prior record. Managed logistics, inventory, and revenue tracking from the Crystal City office. Her encrypted laptop contained the complete organizational chart of the network. Lieutenant James Foley, 46, Maryland State Police, 15-year veteran, provided advance warning of patrol routes, highway checkpoints, and pending warrant executions. Paid $8,000 monthly in cash. Neil Brogan, 39, Assistant U.S. Attorney for the District of Maryland, diverted 3 active grand jury investigations away from network associates, leaked sealed indictment timelines, received $25,000 per quarter. Caldwell used his Judiciary Committee position to request briefings on active DEA operations, then relayed classified details to Whitfield through encrypted channels. The man writing anti-trafficking laws was running the trafficking operation. December 1st, 2025. FBI Strategic Operations Command Center, Washington, D.C. A wall of monitors displays satellite imagery, vehicle tracking feeds, and real-time wiretap dashboards. The 47 red markers pulse across a digital map stretching from Virginia Beach to Pittsburgh. Assistant Director Catherine Blake addresses 412 agents from 4 federal agencies via secure video link. The execution order is issued at 3 a.m. At 3:30 a.m., federal tactical teams launch simultaneously across 6 states. At 3:47 a.m., the primary strike team reaches Senator Caldwell's Georgetown residence. 41 agents in tactical gear approach from 3 directions. The ram strikes the front door on the first swing. Agents pour through the foyer. Caldwell is found on the 2nd floor, standing in his bedroom doorway. He does not resist. He says 5 words. "I want my attorney now." Agents recover 3 encrypted phones from his nightstand, a wall safe containing $340,000 in cash, and a laptop with active connections to the Sentinel communications channel. His wife, Patricia Caldwell, is escorted to a separate room. She is not charged. Simultaneously, at the Kenilworth Avenue warehouse in Capitol Heights, a second team of 38 agents breaches the loading dock entrance. The facility is empty of personnel. Agents catalog the processing equipment, the fentanyl stockpile, and an additional 2,100 pounds of methamphetamine concealed in modified shipping containers. At 3:51 a.m. in Crystal City, Virginia, DEA agents enter Carla Jennings's office suite. Jennings is at her desk. She attempts to close her laptop. An agent secures it before the screen locks. The hard drive contains real-time inventory tracking for 9 distribution nodes across 3 states. At 4:02 a.m. in Annapolis, Maryland, U.S., Marshals arrest Lieutenant James Foley at his home. His department-issued service weapon is on the kitchen table. A burner phone in his coat pocket contains 147 text messages coordinating route clearances with Stanton. At 4:08 a.m. in Baltimore, a joint FBI-DEA team raids a row house serving as a mid-level stash location. Inside, 612 pounds of heroin, $1.4 million in vacuum-sealed cash bundles, and 3 AR-15 rifles with filed serial numbers. At 4:14 a.m., Assistant U.S. Attorney Neil Brogan is arrested in the parking garage of his Bethesda condominium. He is carrying a briefcase containing a burner phone and $47,000 in $100 bills. He tells agents he has nothing to say. Gerald Whitfield is arrested without incident at his McLean residence at 4:22 a.m. His home office yields 11 external hard drives, 3 laptops, and paper records for every shell company in the network. By 6:15 a.m., Operation Iron Corridor is complete. 183 individuals arrested across 47 locations in Virginia, Maryland, D.C., Pennsylvania, West Virginia, and Delaware. 74 tons of narcotics seized. $213 million in cash recovered. 31 properties frozen. 18 vehicles impounded, including a Bentley Continental, 2 armored Range Rovers, and a 42-foot yacht docked in Annapolis Harbor. Comment justice, if you believe they deserved what came next. The evidence filled 3 federal warehouses. DEA laboratory analysis confirmed the narcotics breakdown. 22 tons of fentanyl and fentanyl analogs, sufficient to deliver 4.8 billion lethal doses. 31 tons of methamphetamine at 94% purity. 16 tons of heroin. 5 tons of cocaine. The combined street value exceeded $9.6 billion. It was the largest single-operation narcotics seizure in the history of the Eastern Seaboard. Cash recovery totaled $213 million. Bills were stored in vacuum-sealed bags inside drywall cavities, buried beneath concrete slabs in warehouse floors, and packed into modified fuel tanks of commercial vehicles. Denominations ranged from 20s to hundreds. Counting took federal teams 9 days. Weapons seized: 74 firearms, including 12 AR-15 pattern rifles, 9 AK-47 variants, 22 handguns, and 4 shotguns. 14 weapons had obliterated serial numbers. 3 were confirmed stolen from military installations. Digital forensics proved most devastating. FBI cyber teams extracted 1.7 terabytes of data from seized devices. Whitfield's hard drives contained the complete financial history of the network dating back to 2021. Jennings's laptop held distribution records for 9 active hubs, 23 street-level dealers, and 417 coded client accounts. Caldwell's encrypted phone contained 312 messages exchanged with Sentinel channel participants, including one that read, "Brogan confirmed grand jury postponed. Window open through March. Move the Baltimore shipment." Another message, dated September 2025, read, "Foley says checkpoint moved to 295 interchange Friday. Route 50 corridor clear after midnight. Financial forensic reconstruction mapped $47 million laundered through domestic shells and $22.2 million moved offshore across 7 jurisdictions. The laundering cycle averaged 72 hours from street-level cash collection to offshore deposit. Whitfield's system processed an average of $2.1 million per week without generating a single automated flag. Share this so more people understand what was almost lost. But the numbers did not capture the real damage. Beyond the courtroom, the real cost was measured in lives that ended without warning. Brandon Ellis, 28, was an electrician from Woodbridge, Virginia. He had been clean for 14 months after completing a rehabilitation program. On August 12, 2025, he bought what he believed was a prescription painkiller from a coworker at a construction site in Arlington. The pill was a counterfeit oxycodone tablet pressed at the Kenilworth Avenue facility. It contained a lethal concentration of fentanyl. His younger sister found him unresponsive in his apartment the following morning, and he was pronounced dead at Innova Fairfax Hospital at 7:14 a.m. The pill came from Stanton's distribution chain. Tamika Brooks, 34, was a registered nurse and single mother of 2 in Southeast D.C. She suffered from chronic migraines. A trusted neighbor sold her pills described as generic Percocet. They were counterfeits manufactured by Caldwell's network. She took 2 on a Thursday evening after putting her children to bed. Her 8-year-old daughter called 911 at 6:30 the next morning. Tamika was already gone. Her children now live with their grandmother in Richmond. Federal prosecutors estimated that fentanyl distributed through the Iron Corridor network was linked to at least 2,300 overdose deaths across 6 states between 2022 and 2025. Community leaders in Prince George's County held emergency town halls. And church congregations organized vigils. Residents demanded to know how a network of this scale operated for years under the protection of elected officials and law enforcement officers sworn to protect them. If this makes you angry, comment "Never Again" below. March 16, 2026. E. Barrett Prettyman, Federal Courthouse, Washington, D.C. Senator Richard Caldwell entered the courtroom in a dark gray suit, hands unshackled, flanked by 3 defense attorneys from the firm he retained at $1,200 per hour. He did not look at the gallery. He did not look at the families seated in the 3rd row. The indictment contained 47 counts. Conspiracy to distribute controlled substances in violation of 21 U.S.C. Section 846. Continuing criminal enterprise under 21 U.S.C. Section 848. Money laundering conspiracy under 18 U.S.C. Section 1956. Honest services fraud. Obstruction of justice. RICO conspiracy. His defense team argued entrapment and prosecutorial overreach, claiming Caldwell was a legitimate politician targeted for his policy positions. Prosecutors presented 312 encrypted messages, financial transfer records, and testimony from 4 cooperating witnesses, including Derek Stanton, who accepted a reduced sentence in exchange for full cooperation. The jury deliberated for 4 hours and 18 minutes, guilty on all 47 counts. Judge Margaret Chen sentenced Caldwell to 42 years in federal prison without the possibility of parole. She stated from the bench, "You weaponized the trust of the American people. You used the machinery of democracy to protect a pipeline of death." Gerald Whitfield received 28 years for money laundering conspiracy and RICO violations. Carla Jennings received 22 years for narcotics distribution conspiracy and financial crimes. Lieutenant James Foley received 18 years and was stripped of his pension, benefits, and law enforcement certification. Neil Brogan received 24 years and was permanently disbarred. Derek Stanton received 12 years under his cooperation agreement. Of the 183 individuals arrested, 147 accepted plea agreements. 31 proceeded to trial. All were convicted. Total sentences exceeded 2,600 combined years of federal imprisonment. Asset forfeiture recovered $213 million in cash, $22.2 million in offshore holdings, 31 real properties valued at $38 million, and 18 vehicles. Caldwell's Georgetown brownstone, his Hilton Head estate, and the Turks and Caicos villa were seized and scheduled for federal auction. In the aftermath, the Senate Ethics Committee launched a formal investigation into committee-level intelligence sharing protocols. The Department of Justice created a dedicated public corruption narcotics task force. Maryland State Police initiated internal affairs reviews of 19 officers. 2 additional assistant U.S. attorneys in the District of Maryland resigned under investigation. But the investigation was not over. 3 mid-level operatives indicted under Iron Corridor remain fugitives. Marcus Webb, 41, a logistics coordinator, was last tracked to the Dominican Republic. Intelligence intercepts suggest at least 4 similar networks continue to operate along the I-95 corridor between Philadelphia and Richmond. The most dangerous threat is not at the border. It is already inside, wearing a suit, sitting behind a desk, are casting votes on the Senate floor. Comment your thoughts below. Hit like so this story breaks through algorithms. Share this with anyone who believes the system will protect them without accountability. We are currently investigating a similar network operating along the Gulf Coast corridor. If you want us to expose them next, subscribe.